Hey guys, in today's video we're going to look at some aftermarket high capacity magazines for the 10/22 Magnum style rifle. The gun we want these magazines for is this new Magnum Research. It's the MLR 1722M. This gun comes with a nice factory Ruger rotary magazine. This is a very high quality magazine, but it's a 9-round magazine. So my question was, what options do we have if we want to put a high capacity magazine in this gun? So I searched the internet and I basically found two different types of high capacity 22 Magnum magazines for the 10/22 Magnum style rifle. On one hand, we have these very nice machined aluminum and stainless steel Volquartsen magazines, but they run a little over $100. And then there were several brands that were similar to this. This is a Champion shooting gear magazine. This is a polycarbonate 25 round magazine. It's a double stack magazine. It's lighter and shorter. And basically they were the options we had to choose from. Now, reviews on both of these magazines are mixed. There are folks that got these magazines, rated them with 5 stars, said they worked right off the bat. There are other folks that complained about this Volquartsen magazine as far as the fit in the gun, and it was not feeding, and they sent them back and just rated it as a 1 star. On the other hand, these Champion magazines, there again, there were plenty of 5-star ratings. Folks that bought these magazines said they worked right off the bat, and there were a lot of 1-star ratings that did not work at all. They were jam-o-matics, they sent them back. And so complaints with this magazine seemed to be not so much the fit in the gun, but just that it would fail to feed at times. This is a double stack magazine, which is a little bit more complicated. And there were suggestions of lubricating the 4 rails inside the magazine that the magazine follower rides on. And there were some suggestions of modifying the front of the feed block with a round file to prevent the bullet from striking this front plate during the feeding. But we're not going to do anything yet. We're going to take these magazines out to Bullet Creek and we're going to see how they work in the new Magnum Research rifle. The two magazines we're going to look at today are both 25 round magazines. This is a magazine made by Champion Shooting Gear. The other magazine that we want to look at is an aftermarket Volquartsen. So let's look at these and see how they function. $100+, $20, lighter, shorter, heavier, but built like a tank. One question is, are they a pain to load, or are they going to load pretty easily? We're going to look at this $20 magazine from Champion first. I think what I'll do with any new product like this, I kind of like to just load a few rounds and test fire it first, so that if it's jam-o-matic, that I don't have to try to unload 25 rounds of rim fire from a magazine. So we'll put a few rounds in here and put it in the gun. It's loading fairly easily. Let's just start with this and see if it's going to function well. So we'll put a few rounds in the Volquartsen magazine. This seems to load fine. Not quite as smooth feeling as loading the other magazine, probably because it's made with metal rather than plastic, and just the plastic magazine has a little bit smoother feel, but this is very easy to load. So we've loaded a few rounds in each of these magazines, and let's just take these and test fire them at some targets in Bullet Creek real quick. So we have our Magnum Research MLR 1722 Magnum. We're trying the new Champion magazines, a 25 round double stack. We only have a few rounds, and then we'll compare this to the Volquartsen. We're using CCI 40 grain total metal jacket for all of our tests. And let's see how it runs. Okay, that ran well. So next we'll load it with 25 rounds and put it through the test. Here's the Volquartsen. Very tight, maybe too tight. Let's see how it runs. Okay, got a little jam. I think this magazine is very tight and may require a little breaking in. Another jam. Okay, now we've loaded both of these magazines to full capacity. Okay, so now the first round did not chamber. So we had to go back a second time. There again, there's probably a little bit more pressure on it. Let's just see how it does. That went about 50 feet in the air. Okay, we got a jam. It's fed. And we have a double feed. Looks like we have a couple more rounds to go. Well, that was my fault. I thought we were empty. So a couple of feeding issues, new rifle, new magazine. Let's try the other magazine now. Same issue. Okay, so both of these magazines are having some issues. Okay, I think for today we're going to stop this. Both magazines had issues. We're going to take the rifle home, take it apart, clean it, inspect it, and we'll continue our evaluation. Thank you. So we've been out for our first look with the high capacity aftermarket 1022 Magnum style magazines. The Volquartsen and the Champion magazines both had some issues. The Volquartsen magazine was very tight in the gun, and when we charged the gun with an empty magazine, it felt like there was a little bit of friction between the bottom of the bolt and the top of the feed lips. Now the gun was brand new and the magazine was brand new. The fixes that people talk about on the internet for this magazine have to do with hand fitting the magazine to the gun. But since the gun and the magazine were both brand new, and since the magazine cost over $100, I was a little reluctant to start filing on this magazine to try to get it to fit a little bit looser in the gun. So I thought we'd clean the gun first and then give this magazine a second chance. Now, the Champion magazine ran fine when we only loaded 10 rounds in the magazine. No problems whatsoever. However, when we fully loaded this with 25 rounds, it also had problems stripping the rounds out and getting them in the chamber. Now, if you look on the internet, what people talk about with this particular type of magazine are the two fixes that we talked about earlier. Lubing up the tracks that the magazine follower rides on, and also modifying the front of the feed block. And what I did was used a small round file, and you can see the before and after. Hopefully that'll focus. And this front of the feed block is straight here, and I've rounded it with a round file. And the theory here is that that will help the round be stripped from the magazine without hitting the front of this feed block. So we've done these two mods on the Champion magazines, and what we'd like to do now, we've got the rifle, we've cleaned it up and lubed it up. We've done a few mods on one of the Champion magazines, and then I have a brand new magazine that has not been used or modified. And so we'll see if doing these modifications make a difference, or if just simply breaking in the gun and getting back out with an unmodified polycarbonate Champion magazine will make the difference. So let's get back out at Bullet Creek and see what we find. Well, we're back out for our second look at some of these high capacity 22 Magnum magazines. Both of these magazines had problems when we came out here. The gun was brand new, the magazines were brand new. The Volquartsen magazine, the issues that it was having was that it was very tight in the rifle, and there seemed to be a little bit of rubbing between the feed lip and the bottom of the bolt. And in looking at it now, there appears to be no friction between these two areas. It's still very snug as far as the fit inside the gun, but this is a very expensive magazine. So rather than modify this magazine, we're going to go ahead and give it a second chance now that we feel like maybe the magazine and the gun have been broken in a little bit, and we'll see how this does today. It seems to be functioning well in an empty magazine and an empty gun. Now, the Champion magazines, they fit with a little play, which is very typical for a 1022 style rifle, but they also had some feeding issues. Now, this magazine, when we only had 10 rounds in it, fed very well, but when we loaded it to full capacity with 25 rounds, there was more force here, and it did have some issues stripping some of the rounds. We had a couple of failures to chamber, and so we read about these magazines online. The couple of suggestions that were made online regarding these magazines were to place some lube on the tracks where the follower rides, and also to do a little modification of the front of this feed block. So we have a brand new unmodified Champion 25 round magazine, and then we have the magazine we used in our first test. We've modified the feed block, we put a little lube inside, and we're going to test both of these today and see how they work. So we're first going to look at the Volquartsen magazine. Remember, the first time we checked this, we only put 10 rounds, and even with 10 rounds, this was having problems. We've still only put 10 rounds in this, and let's see what it does now that the gun's broken in a little bit. Okay, the gun's clear. So, it did do much better the second time around now with 10. Let's load this to capacity and see how it's going to run. We've loaded 25 rounds. It still fits very snugly in the gun. Feels very nice. Let's see if it'll charge. Okay. and let's see if it'll run through 25 rounds. We're having the same kind of failure every time the bolt is riding over the round. Okay, so even though it seems like there wasn't any more friction in the gun, this is not working well. So let's go to our Champion magazines and see how they do. Okay, now we're going to look at the Champion magazines. One thing I forgot to mention, which was kind of neat about the Champion magazines, is they do have coupling devices on one side of the magazine so that you can actually take two magazines and put them together and theoretically have a package with 50 rounds of 22 Magnum together. Now, we have our used, modified Champion magazine, and we have our brand new, unused and unmodified Champion magazine with our rifle that's had probably about 250 rounds through it now. So we've loaded these both to capacity. We'll start with the modified Champion magazine. Once again, kind of a neat package with 50 rounds. And let's see if we have any feeding issues now with this modified magazine. Yes. Okay, we have a failure to completely eject the spent casing. And what happened? We did have a round that got chambered. Let's see if that happens again. So much for the coupling devices. That didn't hold up very good. So let's take this magazine and put it in our pocket. Now the extra weight of those magazines may make a difference. So we'll leave this uncoupled and we'll finish out our test. That was another failure to eject the casing out of the way of the bolt. We have a round in the chamber. Same failure. You get the same failure. Same failure. Okay, empty magazine. We have a brand new unmodified Champion magazine. We just demonstrated the coupling devices don't hold the magazines together under fire. Magazine's in, feels good. We'll charge it and let's see if the brand new magazine works. Okay, the same kind of failure with the brand new unmodified magazine. There was a round chambered, but it did not kick out the brass. And different failure now. We have a bolt over the cartridge type of failure. Same failure, didn't eject the brass. And did have a round in the chamber. Bolt over cartridge failure. So just multiple failures, different types of failures, brand new magazine, modified magazine. Nothing seemed to work better. Now, I'm kind of curious. We'll go ahead and take the factory magazine and make sure they run. Make sure there's nothing wrong with this rifle that's causing this problem, and see what kind of results we get with that. Let's go get the factory magazine. So now we have the factory 9-round rotary magazine from Ruger. Okay, we did have a brass problem right there. So we had one failure. Let's check it, reload this magazine and see what happens again. We reloaded the factory magazine, 9 rounds. The failure to eject occurred when we were doing rapid fire. Let's just do some steady fire. Must have only loaded 8 in that. 9 rounds again in the factory rotary magazine from Ruger. Let's try rapid fire and see what happens. Okay, with rapid fire we had another failure with the brass. We have a chambered round and a dropped hammer. So the rapid fire seems to be an issue. Steady fire, the magazine can handle it pretty good. So in summary, what can we say about these aftermarket high capacity 1022 Magnum type of magazines? Well, as you can tell, we did not have a really good experience with these. The Volquartsen magazine did not function reliably even after we broke in the rifle. It's a very expensive magazine. Now, Volquartsen has an excellent reputation for making high quality products. Remember, we're testing this in a Magnum Research 1022 style rifle. They make their own rifles in 1022 Magnum style, and I'm sure these magazines function very well in those rifles. I can't speak to that because we don't have that to test. So what we can say in our experience is, as you've seen with the Magnum Research 1722M rifle, this magazine did not perform well, and certainly I couldn't recommend getting this magazine for this rifle. Now the Champion magazines, much less costly, but once again, even though they were a little bit more reliable, there were multiple failures. We tried modifications that did not seem to help at all. And so certainly as a range toy, since they're only around 20 bucks, if you want to try these, it might be worth playing with. You might be one of those lucky ones that gets one that seems to work right out of the box. We have 2 of them, neither one worked. We modified one, that didn't help. And so I certainly can't recommend these as a reliable source for high capacity 1022 Magnum style magazines. With the rotary magazine shooting rapid fire, we did have an occasional failure to clear the brass out of the chamber, but otherwise it was a very reliable magazine. Maybe the best thing to do is just buy some extra 9-round magazines if you want to carry around a higher capacity. You have to remember we're testing specific magazines in a specific firearm. I hope that you found the information useful. If you have any questions or comments, please post those under the video and I'll try to respond to those. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.